Hello everyone, I have a video that a lot of people aren't going to care about, but I felt like doing it because it sounded fun. And this is going to be, I'm going to tier rank the Targaryen monarchs for A Song of Ice and Fire. Now, this is the first 5 and a bit are coming from things I read in Fire and Blood, and then the rest is just from the world of Ice and Fire. So, for the second half, grains of salt have to be taken in, because Fire and Blood is much more detailed. And also, I mean, the Fire and Blood ones have to be taken with a grain of salt because narrators are often unreliable. This is going to have House of the Dragon spoilers for kind of the middle part. I'm going to put timestamps for the monarchs that are going to be featured in House of the Dragon. It's only going to be a little bit of the video, so if you don't want to know who becomes the king during that, you can just leave when I'm done with the conciliator and come back with like Daryon 1. I have a cheat sheet for if I forget who someone is, because there were a lot of these folks. But I will not be ranking these people as people. I will be ranking them based on how good they were at their job. So their job is to be the monarch of Westeros. If they did a really bad job at that, I will be giving them a low mark, even if I don't think they're a terrible person. Also, all these lists skip out on someone who is, I'm not going to say their name because it's going to be in House of the Dragon, but I'm going to say where that person would be. Anyways, we're going in chronological order, and I didn't have to make this tier list, which I'm really happy about, which is also why it doesn't have names, because most people don't, and also has cut off heads. You know, if I made the tier list, you'd be able to see everyone's head, and there'd be names. But I didn't put in that much effort. So, Aegon the First, Aegon the Conqueror, who, you know, forged 7 kingdoms into 1. He is going to be an A-tier monarch. He was generally, like, even for if you lived in the 7 kingdoms, as much as living under one kingdom sucked, living under, like, 7 different kingdoms sucked way more. There was constant wars, and the amount of actual, like, your chances of dying by sword decreased massively under one kingdom compared to, like, under 7. And Aegon was very good at both militarily and in terms of ruling. He, like, went all the way around the kingdom. He didn't just stay in King's Landing, and he actually listened to what people said. There are some things that holding him back from S. He kind of just left the laws in place that previous, like, kingdoms had, so he didn't really do much reforming. He also fought a completely pointless war in Dorne, where he just invaded Dorne for, like, 10 years, burned a bunch of cities, and then gave up. So, that was kind of useless, but, I mean, he's still Aegon 1, he's still the Conqueror, and he still did a pretty damn good job, and it's like, you know, it's one of the ones where if he was immortal, the 7 kingdoms would have lasted a long time. But not S tier in my opinion. And next we have Aenys 1, and this is a great example. I'm gonna add a tier that's gonna be useful later. So we're gonna call that F tier. Aenys was a good dude. Like, he was a considerate dude. If he wasn't a king, he would have been, like, a good person. He was an artist. As a king, he was just completely useless. He not only did nothing, he actively stopped other people from doing anything. Where he was the king, and it's like, alright, you have this hard choice. Either of these options are available. If you do either of them, we'll choose for you. And he's like, nobody choose, nobody do anything. I'm going to go to Dragonstone. He died pretty young. He died basically of stress. And, I mean, he took over in not an ideal position because he was, like, the first successor after Aegon 1. But, like, he had dragons. And one of the queens from, like, the original Conquest was still around. Granted, that queen was being kind of a pain in the ass because that queen was Maegor's mother because Aegon had 2 wives. But he was just completely useless. He's not F tier because he didn't do anything actively cruel. But he's just so useless. And next we have Maegor the Cruel, who, you can tell by the name, was pretty bad. Maegor the Cruel took over after Aenys, and he built the Red Keep, and then he killed everyone who made it, and then he wanted to build more stuff, and people were like, no. He almost led to the destruction of the realm, but I'm not putting him in F. I'm putting him in D. And the reason I'm putting him in D is that before he almost led to the destruction of the realm, he first stopped the destruction of the realm. Because when he took over, the realm was in total chaos, and he actually, stopped the realm from falling apart. And he did things. I mean, you could consider putting him above Aenys. He's just so much worse as a person that I'm not going to. And man, he did a lot of bad stuff. He caused a massive war with the Faith of the Seven. He bankrupted the realm building stuff. He was just... he left the realm in a bad spot for Jaehaerys I. And actually, when Jaehaerys I, who's this old guy, took over, Jaehaerys wasn't even 16 yet, so he had to have regents, who did a moderate job, but then the regents, tried to usurp Jaehaerys. But anyways, so Maegor's going in D, and next we have Jaehaerys I, the Conciliator, who is the best king of Westeros by a lot. And the queen, if Queen Alysanne isn't technically on here, because it's not generally, when you have a monarch, the person they're married to is technically not the actual ruling monarch, they're not the protector of the realm. But Alysanne, the good queen, Jaehaerys' wife, would also be S tier. Jaehaerys was by far the best monarch. So he did not play on easy mode. He played ruling Westeros on hard mode. He took over and no one liked the Targaryens because they just had Aenys and Maegor the Cruel. The realm was completely bankrupt. He had regents that tried to usurp him. He ran into a plague and a famine really quickly. He had a relative, Rhaenys, starts with R, who was kind of insane. Well, not totally insane, but kind of crazy and causing a bunch of shit. Who had a daughter named Arya, who was also causing a bunch of stuff. And he basically ruled over 55 years of mostly prosperity and left Targaryens in the best position they ever were, and the realm in the best position they ever were. He actually reformed laws. He took the laws that Aegon had just left, because when Aegon conquered the Westlands, he was just what's the Westlands law? All right, whatever, we keep those in. And then he went to the Reach, and he's what's the Reach's law? We'll just leave those. And Jaehaerys was what? We have all these contradictory laws, and he actually, wrote a legal code that would be the basis of the legal, that was actually, coherent. He had roads built. King's Landing before that, to get there, to get between anything was terrible, and super unsafe. So he made travel and trade way more efficient while also making it way safer. Good Queen Alysanne gets credit for the following thing, but they made it so the water supplies in King's Landing was way better. Before that, the drinking water mixed with the water that got pooped into in the Blackwater Bay, which it's called Blackwater Bay because of poop. And they had those separated. He renovated King's Landing. He fought in some wars, but they were all kind of defensive wars because people rebelled, and then he instantly would shit on them. He went around the Seven Kingdoms and listened to people. This also Good Queen Alysanne would get the most credit for his entire realm. He was probably the best diplomat of any of the kings of the Seven Kingdoms. He wasn't perfect. He had some strained relationships with some of his children. But he's easily and far and away the best king of Westeros. He ruled for 55 years. It's the long reign. It's the longest reign by far. And it is a good thing he did, because we had the realm almost collapse here. And the next few people are going to be House of the Dragon. So bad things are going to happen, because there wouldn't be a TV show if there was no conflict. So if he didn't rule, Targaryen monarchs probably collapse literally more than a century early. Maybe almost 2 centuries early. And that leaves us Viserys I. And this is going to be the person who is the king when you start House of the Dragon. So if you don't want spoilers for House of the Dragon, you can skip ahead. I'm going to have it timestamped. But Viserys is going to be a C-tier king. Viserys was also pretty useless. He just didn't do that much. But he didn't, Aenys did nothing in a time of crises. At least Viserys didn't actively make things worse. And there was a lot of conflict between like the first child, right, Rhaenyra or whatever. I can't pronounce Targaryen names, which was the first daughter of his first wife, and the children of his second wife. And he didn't cause them to hate each other, but he also was completely oblivious to them hating each other. He didn't do. I mean, he did continue doing the stuff Jaehaerys the Conciliator did, who became known as the Old King because he got really old. But this was the Conciliator when he was ruling. And Viserys did continue that stuff. He pushed like the arts. He was just really mediocre, and I mean, he gets some credit for things didn't fall apart when he was alive, but it's also largely his fault that things completely fell apart the second he died. And after this, you have Aegon II, and there should be Rhaenyra or something. I can't pronounce it. They both were technically the monarch for some point of time. And they were both terrible. I would put Aegon II, like, literally bottom of D tier, and maybe Rhaenyra below them. Rhaenyra, I can't pronounce that. Basically, she wasn't as useless as Aenys. She wasn't as cruel as Maegor. But Maegor wasn't useless, and Aenys wasn't cruel. She was both cruel and useless. She kind of did almost nothing, except every time there was some chance to stop civil war and bloodshed, she didn't do that, and she stopped that from happening. Aegon II was also pretty horrible. I mean, he had a dragon eat someone, like, in front of Aegon III, which, congratulations, you traumatized the future king. He was basically in a position where it's like, all you have to do to stop the civil war is nothing. And he couldn't do that. He's like, nope, we're going again. Round 3, buds. We need another civil war. And it's just, dude, stop it. And next we get Aegon III. And Aegon III is, in my opinion, done dirty. This is where we start getting into World of Ice and Fire. But the start of his reign is from Fire and Blood. And I think he gets done dirty by the text. He ruled for a long time, and his rule is called, like, the Broken Rule. And you can tell no one liked him because he was miserable. Probably because he was depressed. And he just, like, hated his life. But you know what? He hated his life, but he actually ruled the realm. Yeah, he didn't tour around and listen to people, but he hired reasonable advisors and reasonable subordinates. He didn't cause any civil wars, and he generally was at least moderately competent. So you know what? He is a B-tier king in my book. Yeah, he's not Aegon or Jaehaerys, but you know what? He's not bad. And yes, it's true, he had Viserys II, or Viserys, like, mostly doing a lot of the ruling before him, but he made Viserys Hand of the King. So he gets partial credit for that. He was gonna go on, like, a huge procession to start his reign, and then he wasn't regent anymore, and he's like, screw that, take all those resources, feed the poor. Which, yeah, I can't argue with. So, yeah, he's pretty good in my book. And next, I'm going to check here for names. We have Daeron I, the Young Dragon. This is the guy who invaded Dorne. He's really hard to rank, because if you were to rank him as a military commander, he's probably the single best military commander in Westeros history. Like, in terms of feats and, like, how consistently he would win battles. Like, he's an amazing commander. But was invading Dorne good for the realm? Probably not. Like, he just kind of started a war that they didn't really have a good reason to start. He didn't almost destroy the realm or anything. But, so I'm going to put him above Viserys. But, like, why are you invading Dorne, though? Like, I know you want to invade Dorne, and you want it to all be one kingdom. But things were fine. Like, anyways. So he succeeded at his goals. I just don't think his goals were actually good for the Seven Kingdoms. So he's going in C tier. And next we have Baelor the Blessed. He's another person who's kind of hard to rank. Because the first thing he did is he made peace with Dorne. And he was like blessed. He's very religious. He built the Sept of Baelor, and he literally walked across Dorne to like make peace, and then he walked back and went insane. That's the problem, is after his walk back, where he, you know, got bit by some snakes and walks across the desert barefoot, he went crazy. And he went crazy, and he took all the female Targaryens and he locked them in a room because he didn't want them to get married. Like, he wanted them all to stay virgins. He kept, like, he made an 8-year-old, like, the High Septon. But he did build the Sept of Baelor. He spent a lot of money, though, and he did make peace with Dorne. I'm gonna put him in C tier. Like, he made peace with Dorne. If he hadn't gone insane, he probably would have been kind of okay. He would have been a good Septon. And next we get Viserys. And Viserys, if I look here, ruled for 1 year. Technically. But while this person was walking across Dorne and going insane, and this person was invading Dorne, and this person was depressed, you know who was actually ruling the realm? The Hand of the King. Viserys I Targaryen. And you'll note that other than the things the kings directly caused, nothing has really gone bad. Because he was a really good Hand of the King. And you know what? For like the 1 year where he was king, he was really good. And he could have been like an A tier king. You know what? I'm probably going to put him A tier anyways. Because technically, he was only the king for 1 year. But he ruled the realm for like 40. The only person who actually ruled the realm for longer is Jaehaerys, the Conciliator. And you know what? While he was the king for the 1 year, he did a really good job. I'm going to put him in A tier because, I mean, he did a good job. Like, he reformed some laws, he rebuilt some roads, he basically continued with, like, he saw that Jaehaerys was up to something, and then he was like, man, you guys really tried to screw up what Jaehaerys had. We're going back to trying to do Jaehaerys stuff. But then he died under incredibly suspicious circumstances. In other words, this asshole killed him. And this is Aegon IV the Unworthy, who is by far the worst king of Westeros. Eat your heart out, Maegor the Cruel. Eat your heart out, the Mad King. You guys ain't got crap on Aegon IV the Unworthy. Even if he had done a good job and then had the same last words, he'd still probably be the worst king of Westeros. Because on his deathbed, he legitimized all of his bastards. Which led to, like, a century of civil wars and Blackfire rebellions. But other than that, he literally was just the worst. I mean, he was corrupt. He did his best to bankrupt the realm. He did his best. Like, you almost couldn't have tried to rule worse than Aegon the Unworthy. And he died because he was this fat. And man, he ruled for 12 years. We could have had Viserys II for that 12 years. And instead we had Aegon the damn Unworthy. Who basically just spent his time, like, raping people and being like, you're my mistress now. Like, he got told by the maesters that, like, his wife would die if she had another child. And he was one of the Targaryens who married his sister. And his sister was like, hey, so, like, can we just be siblings again? And he's like, we are. And then, like, trying to get her pregnant. He was the worst. He was the worst. This is actually Aegon IV tier. He's as bad as Jaehaerys was good. And next we have Daeron II, who, if you look at his title, is Daeron the Good. And Daeron the Good was pretty damn good. He generally stabilized the realm the best he could. I mean, there were Blackfire rebellions all over the place, but that wasn't his fault. He ruled for a while, like 25 years. I'm going to put him up here. I mean, he was the good for a reason. He wasn't as good. Like, Jaehaerys and Aegon were both who you would want in peace and in war. Like, Jaehaerys I was not just a good king. Jaehaerys I was also badass, as was Aegon I. Although Aegon I's, like, conquests are a lot less impressive, considering he had 3 dragons and no one had any idea how to do it, and he lost against Dorne. Daeron 2 is Daeron. Daeron II is not who you would want in war, but was really good at stability, really good diplomat, generally a pretty good king. And next we have the most forgettable king, Jaehaerys I, who ruled for 12 years. He was basically like a nerd, who was just wanted to like read up among his books and stuff. He didn't do that much. He didn't screw that much up either. Never even consummated his marriage. He was like very frail, but he managed the Blackfire Rebellion somewhat competently. He also, like, Bloodraven from the actual books was his hand of the king, Brandon Rivers, who, like, kind of snuffed out any civil wars. So we kind of played on easy mode, despite having Blackfire Rebellions, just because his hand was like Bloodraven. Very little agency. I'm going to put him in C tier. He's probably better for the realm than Daeron, even though he's much less impressive as a person. And then you have Maekar I, who also apparently ruled for 11 years. What did Maekar even do? Yeah, Maekar didn't do that much, but he didn't screw much up, so I'm going to put him in B tier. He wasn't like a great diplomat or anything, but he was just kind of fine. I don't like the World of Ice and Fire page about Maekar is super short. Hopefully we get more when Blood and Fire comes out. But Maekar was fine. Next we get Aegon V, who if you've read Dunk and Egg, Aegon V is Egg, who I think was pretty damn good. He was like, if anything, his big problem is he wanted to actually reform things to make things better, like make it so lords couldn't just like kill commoners, and the lords weren't happy about that. But like, I don't know, like Aegon didn't try to do any of that, so didn't cause turmoil. Jaehaerys really rode the line of like pushing to reform things while not causing civil war. He pushed it a little bit harder, and he wasn't as successful as Jaehaerys, but like at least he actually cared about the common people. And I'm going to put him as an A-tier king. Was he better than Daeron? I don't know. Like, he did actually good stuff for the people. Like, the lords and the maesters liked him less. I'm actually going to put him here. I think if you were actually living in Westeros, he would be, like, the second best king that you've had. No, we'll put him behind Aegon. I don't know. It's pretty close. But just like the lords and the Citadel didn't like him. But he was still pretty good. He was kind of capable. He got through the War of the Nine Penny Kings. He didn't like die during that. Then he just got sick. I'll put him in B tier. He didn't screw anything up. He just wasn't noteworthy. And then we have Jaehaerys II, who's of course the Mad King, who I'm gonna put here. No, he's not as bad as Aegon IV. Yes, he led to the end of the Targaryens, but like, he still wasn't as bad as Aegon IV. Now, granted, basically all the good, like, if you lived in Westeros, the good parts of his rule were if you lived in Westeros and were affected by the general prosperity of the competent rulership of Tywin Lannister, but didn't actually know Tywin Lannister enough for him to want to kill you, because Tywin Lannister was a dick. But he started, like, he still had Tywin as his hand and was, like, actively countermanding him, and then, of course, like, he went insane. You all know Mad King's probably like the most known one other than maybe Aegon the Conqueror on this list. He was bad. He burned people alive. He led to the Robert's Rebellion. And he lost Robert's Rebellion. I don't know. I guess we'll put him here. I still don't think he's bad as Aegon IV the Unworthy. He just happened to have stronger foes at the time. But the Mad King, there's not that much that's good that you can say about the Mad King, so I'll put him in the bottom of D tier, and, I'm pretty happy with this. I think the top two tiers, for sure, this is I don't know how to spell that. Jaehaerys, I think, is easily the best king. Aegon the Unworthy is easily the worst king. And everyone else is kind of in the middle. I'm pretty happy with these. I think Aegon is pretty clearly the second best. No, these are all pretty good. Like, Viserys only ruled for a year, Viserys II. But, like, he did a good job. And it's just because Aegon killed him. That's also a huge point against Aegon, is, like, when you kill the king who was actually doing a good job. Like, we got Aegon for instead of Viserys II. Well, we didn't. These people don't exist. But you know what I mean. Yeah, so I think I'm pretty happy with this. I think that is my tiers. Let me know if you disagree. There's a lot of room for disagreement because unlike for actual... I mean, there's a lot of room for actual monarchs as well. But we basically have two sources. Like, we have basically the World of Ice and Fire and Fire and Blood. And one of those sources is, like, much, much better. Like, this literally has a page about Maekar. And most of the page is, like, the biggest problem he had was succession. And this is about Maekar's sons. There was, like, literally 2 paragraphs about Maekar. So it's hard to really know whether Maekar was good or not. On the other hand, there's, like, 400 pages about... Not 400, like 300 pages about Jaehaerys I in Fire and Blood. So the amount of, like, of material we have on each king, and obviously there's a lot about the Mad King, like, actually in A Song of Ice and Fire, but from very biased perspectives, whether that be Viserys or from, like, Robert. But anyways, that's I reckon this is moderately reasonable. I mean, it's kind of hard because this isn't, like, as people, it'd be a lot harder. Like, as people, Aenys is, like, up there. Aegon 5 is probably S as well. I mean, you could make case they're better people than Jaehaerys is. Jaehaerys is the much more effective king, and if you actually lived in Westeros, like, near the end of the Long Reign, was the best time to live in Westeros, despite the fact that this guy ran into, like, plague, a bunch of, like, really bad luck with children running into unfortunate accidents and relatives dying, and taking over in a time of bankruptcy and regents. Like, man, he really righted the ship. I mean, if Jaehaerys was, like, 20% less good of a king, then this tier list would be a lot easy because all the forgettable people never would have been king because the Targaryens would have fallen much earlier. Anyways, that's what I got. Bye, everyone.